I'm joined now by Congressman Chris Deluzio. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for having me on.
So obviously the last 24, 36 hours have been very bizarre as Donald Trump has really called in no uncertain terms for the death penalty for a group of Democratic officials who rightly said that soldiers should ignore unlawful orders. You were among those who were targeted by the Trump administration. So first and foremost, what has the last 36 hours been like for you in terms of the aftermath of Donald Trump basically putting a target on your head?
Well, his words have real impact. And he, as you say, right, called for our arrests and execution, but also shared post calling for us to be hanged. All of us who are not just members of Congress, but wore the uniform or served intelligence services. These are people who have served the country. And I've had death threats come in. My offices and my district have had bomb threats called in. My staff is safe. I'm glad to say, proud to say, but it's dangerous stuff. And if there's any silver lining in this, and it's not about me or my colleagues, the outpouring of condemnation of Donald Trump's violent words, his calls for violence against us, has really been heartening, encouraging to see so many people in my district in Western Pennsylvania and beyond say enough is enough. I mean, this guy is just, it tells you all you need to know about him, and his response to us restating the law is a threatened death. It's
Can you
crazy.
can you talk about what the law actually is with regard to refusing to obey unlawful orders?
I mean, it's exactly that. No one can ever be forced in uniform to follow illegal orders. It's something you learn. I went to the Naval Academy. You learn that in plebe summer and your time there. You learn it if you go to boot camp. You train on it regularly in uniform. And senior officers, like admirals and generals, have JAGs or military lawyers to help navigate through these issues. It's fundamental. And by the way, the people who pointed to a defense of I was just following orders, Nazis at Nuremberg, that defense was rejected. This is a long tradition of you can never force our troops to follow illegal orders. And it's shocking to me that simply restating the meaning of the oath to the Constitution, restating the law, prompted Donald Trump to threaten to kill us and have us killed. It's just it tells you all you need to know about this guy.
What about the response from Republicans more broadly? I know that when it comes to anything, you've got the Mike Johnsons of the world who will dutifully toe the line and like offer him slavish devotion, and that really is the sole qualification for being in Republican leadership these days. But what has the response more broadly been like from the GOP?
I wish it were more uniform in condemning what he said, but I'm not seeing much political courage to say that calling for the death of members of Congress
Yeah.
for stating the law is out of bounds. Good patriotic Americans, Democrats, Republicans, you name it, in my district, they understand this is wrong. I'm not seeing enough courage from the Republicans I've served with, and some have spoken up. I don't want to erase what some of them have said, but I think this should be an easy one. And Brian, I'll be honest, there were lots of calls for Democrats to condemn the killing of Charlie Kirk, as I condemned. I quickly and loudly condemned when Donald Trump was nearly killed in Butler, just north of my district in Pennsylvania. This shouldn't be hard for people to do.
Yeah.
And just the fact that it's Donald Trump saying it, seeing people unwilling to condemn it who are in elected office, it's pathetic, it's weak, and it's frankly how this stuff becomes normal, and it should never be normalized in our country.
To what extent do you think that this lash out is the result of really what's been a growing progression of losses for Trump, whether it was on, a couple Tuesdays back, the election results, whether it was the fact that with the release of the Epstein files, we saw the House vote 427-1, and then the Senate vote unanimously to release them, despite all of these efforts by Donald Trump to suppress these files over the course of 10 months. And so do you think it was just coincidence that in the aftermath of all that, of his sinking poll numbers, finding out that Gen Zs and Latino voters are running away from this MAGA coalition that they had been a part of before? Do you think it's a coincidence that all of that stuff happened and was immediately followed by an effort by Donald Trump to kind of thrust forward some big display of strength?
Well, I wouldn't put it past him, and he looks like a weak president at this point. His numbers are imploding, as you pointed out. The Republicans under his leadership just got walloped in the polls 2 weeks ago. He looks weak, and his own party broke against him to release the Epstein files, as you said, nearly unanimously. So I don't know what's in his heart of hearts, but I think the writing's on the wall that his whole political program is imploding, his numbers are imploding, and he's poised to lead the Republicans down to electoral defeat in a big, big way in the midterms less than a year from now.
What about the use of political violence as a tool moving forward? The reality is that Trump already pardoned 1,600 insurrectionists, many of whom were violent, and now he's pardoned the suits of that whole election subversion scheme that he put forward. And that was just a couple of weeks ago. And granted, that was, in large part symbolic because these people were contending with state prosecutions. But that notwithstanding, he sent a clear message from the White House that any effort that no matter what you do, no matter how violent it was, that all of that would be excused so long as it was in deference to him.
It's dangerous stuff. And I think people understand how dangerous it is, right? If you're hearing a signal from the president that you can go commit crimes, but there'll be a pardon waiting for you,
Yeah.
you have no incentive to follow the law. That's crazy. That's such a break from bedrock law and order ideas in this country. And you mentioned the people he pardoned on January 6th. I mean, a lot of cop beaters in that group that he's pardoned. A lot of people who attacked the Capitol Police and others who are defending the Capitol, defending our government. It's dangerous stuff, and I'm just never taken a lecture from this guy or anyone else who defends those pardons and talks to me about patriotism or law and order. They can miss me with that crap. It is just outrageous.
In terms of your own conversations with your constituents, you'd mentioned at the top that you'd received this outpouring of support in light of what Trump just did. What have your conversations more broadly been like with independents or Republicans? Those are the folks who I'm especially curious about, because we have seen a lot of the coalition that propelled Trump and Republicans into the majority everywhere, White House, Senate, House. We've seen that coalition begin to fracture. And so in your own personal experiences, what does that look like?
Look, I think a lot of people, whatever their political leanings, and we can talk about independents, Republican leaning independents, Republicans in Western Pennsylvania are feeling the pinch, the squeeze of cost pounding them, and know that Donald Trump and the Republicans have full control of our government. And not only have they failed to bring down costs have gotten worse. They've continued to rise since they've had full power. And we've just had this fight over these Affordable Care Act tax credits. My constituents are looking at these premiums, and we're talking 75% average increases if you're shopping on the exchange in Pennsylvania and my two counties right now. People who aren't just core Democrats are mad about this. They know that Donald Trump promised to deliver lower cost, and he has delivered the exact opposite. And Brian, I'll tell you, I'm in steel country, right? This is a place where we have lived through bad trade deals, and people are furious at the recklessness of Donald Trump's trade wars and what it's meant for cost of living for us in Western Pennsylvania.
Do you think there's a recognition from your constituents that Donald Trump basically sold them a bill of goods? This guy ran on this idea that he is going to lower the cost of housing, of rent, of groceries. He went so granular that he was talking about the price of eggs, only to then get into office, start a trade war that raised the cost of everything, cut Medicaid for 17 million Americans, refuse to extend the ACA subsidies that are going to mean, like you said, 75% on average increases in ACA premiums. And then on top of that this guy has the audacity to focus all of his attention on cutting down the east wing of the White House so he can build himself a ballroom, buy a couple of Gulfstream jets for Kristi Noem, retrofit a Qatari jet to the tune of $1 billion, host Great Gatsby parties at Mar-a-Lago, encrust the Oval Office in gold. What has the response been like from folks who believed this guy when he was on the campaign trail promising to feel the pain of everyday Americans?
And look, I don't disparage people based on how they vote, right? There are good and decent people all over the spectrum who I think go right to where you just pointed, which is this guy promised to accomplish a lot about making my life better. And not only has he failed to do that, my life has gotten worse, and this guy is off doing all the things you just listed. Nothing to do with making life more affordable and better for people, all while doing crazy things like threatening to kill their congressman for stating the law. It's reckless stuff. And again, I run and win in a very competitive district, and I'm telling you, people have had enough of this. We just had elections in Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago, and the judicial races weren't even close. The municipal races weren't even close. In my district, one of the most competitive in the country, the judicial candidates, the statewide judicial candidates, won by more than 20 points. That tells you people have had enough of what's happening in Washington under full Republican control. They're ready for something different here.
One more question on safety. How do you think about talking about that publicly? Because on one hand, I understand that it probably is important to make sure that people know the consequences of what this guy does, the real world consequences that his words have. But on the other hand, is there some concern that by virtue of talking about it, it validates it as a tool that other people can say, hey, this is clearly having an impact. Maybe I should, glom onto this effort on behalf of Donald Trump, who's issued his clarion call?
I think it'd be easy to be scared here, and I don't want to undersell the seriousness that I'm taking, or with which I'm taking these threats. But I've been elected to do a job. I've sworn the oath at the Constitution. I did it when I was 17, heading the Naval Academy. I take that seriously. I have a duty to represent the people who sent me. And I'm not going to let this guy intimidate me, whether he threatens my life or otherwise. And we need patriots in this moment who understand that and are willing to stand up to this guy and do their job and do their duty. That is a simple question for me of whether I'm going to show up and do my job. And I'll be goddamned I'll let this guy intimidate me from doing it.
Perfectly put. We'll leave it there. Congressman, appreciate your time.
Thank you.